All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the December 13th Program and Budget Meeting. With that, I'd like to start off with our mission statement. Macomb County Community Mental Health, guided by the values, strengths, and informed choices of the people we serve, provides quality services which promote recovery, community participation, self-sufficiency, and independence. Next item up is the adoption of the agenda. Motion by Lou, support from Joan. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The agenda is adopted. Next item is hearing of the public. Anybody from the public wishing to speak, you have 5 minutes. Lisa, stay seated. Anybody else from the public? Going once, going twice. All right, we will close the hearing of the public. I tried. Next, item 4, request to approve to modify the language in the specialty services contract between Macomb Oakland Regional Center and Macomb County Community Mental Health. Take a motion to approve. Motion from Joan, support from Selena. Are there any questions on this? Kathy?
Thank you. Could we just have an overview of this? What is changing and in which direction?
Hi, good evening. We did remove one piece of language from the beginning of the boilerplate, which noted contractual violations for a request for authorization for services. And we took that out because it shouldn't be on the request. It should be the providing and billing us for services that are not appropriate. And so we changed that and put it on the claims end, where we requested appropriate clinical documentation to support anything that is being billed to us for services.
So how we're the contract, other than that language,
That's
the
the only-
service part of it is not changing,
Correct.
and prices are not changing?
Correct.
Thank
It's
you.
just that piece of language.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Next, item 4B, the approval of residential lease A. I'll take a motion to approve. Motion by Chris,
Support?
support from Kathy. Any questions or comments on this one? All right, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? One opposed? Lou opposes. Motion passes. Next item up is 4C, out-of-state travel for corporate compliance officer to attend compliance conference. I'll take a motion from Lou,
Support?
support from Kathy. Any comments or questions on this one? You want to come and tell us where you're going?
So I'll be attending the Healthcare Compliance Academy at the Hyatt in Chicago, Illinois. So they'll be going over the basic elements of the compliance program and how to implement it. They'll be going over auditing, policies and procedures, infrastructure, oversight, Stark and anti-kickback laws. They'll even cover HIPAA, privacy, and billing and reimbursement. So that'll be in March. And then at the end, in order to be certified in healthcare compliance, there's an exam that I would need to take and pass. So. I do.
We don't grade you, though.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? And you said you're driving, right?
I do plan to drive just
Okay.
because the weather is a little unpredictable at that
Yeah.
time. So I thought if there's a storm, I could leave early
Perfect.
to get there, not the
Right.
conference.
Be careful.
Right.
Hopefully the weather holds out. Any other questions or comments? All right, we have a motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next is 5A, receive and file direct staff rates documentation. I know we discussed this being a receive and file and whether or not that's the route we wanted to go, and that's what we're gonna stick with pending some discussion. Are there any questions? I know you were asked if you had any questions or comments to reach out to staff ahead of time. Are there any questions tonight? Linda, were you raising your hand? Go
Oh,
ahead.
well, they did answer my questions, but I still have the same concern that, of course, the prices went up and, you know, there are some new, when what we were looking at in our work group were the high cost of providing direct services, which, in my opinion, the work group hasn't concluded their findings on that or their whatever. And so that the prices, that the chart's going up, and there were some, it was explained that some of them aren't this case, but there were some that were new, that were in fact not on the records before and are new. So that's a concern too, that it's kind of the wrong direction if we were looking at addressing the high cost of direct services. But they did answer my questions.
Thank you, Linda. You have any comments, John?
No, this was on the agenda last month, and obviously there was some question on whether or not it would be receive and file or adopt. You know, it makes no difference to me. You can defer back to the chair and how you want to proceed with that. It's the standard protocol that we've always engaged in. We give you the rates that are quantitative, they're not qualitative, the cost of direct operating our businesses. And so they are what they are. And so the format and the manner in which we've always given you the rate has remained consistent. It is true, we have new rates. So if there was a zero before and now it's, you know, $312, it's because we didn't, you know, deliver the service before. Now we are delivering that service. Some of them do go up for a number of different reasons. Some of them go down. But, you know, we complied with the board's request. A few of the board members contacted administration, asked for clarification. I think we provided that clarification. So again, I think so we can continue to just operate business as we have been. In light of and recognizing that maybe the work group still wants to look at our direct operator rates, that's fine, in another day, another time, but they do need to be either received and filed or adopted, and I'll defer to the chair on that.
Thank you, John. Selena?
I do agree that we need to go ahead and file these, receive and file. However, I would like to see, and I don't think my question was asked when we were in the work group, is what are the administrative costs in these costs? How are we keeping track of that so that we can actually compare them to, you know, outside vendors? I didn't get an answer last time. I still would like to see that, so I wouldn't mind having the work group pull back together.
To the chair, Dawn, are you prepared, or can you highlight and identify the administrative costs that are related to the direct program operations? Do you know that number off the top of your head? $2.2 million. Why don't you can we come up to the microphone, please? Maybe highlight a little bit on how you arrived at the analogy of the administrative cost and what that figure is.
The administrative costs have changed since the last time we've done the rates. We used to allocate administration, the PIHP administration, over all the expense categories, including residential and all the other provider services, as well as the directs. But what we've looked at is we're doing this administrative cost report, and I'm sure you've heard of that. And the state was looking at that, saying that our admin was too high at 5.5%, which that's really a reasonable admin rate. However, that cost, when we do the admin report, we look at what things would we not do if we did not have direct services. So a provider has their own administration, the direct services do not. So we provide a lot of that through, you know, John's position, payroll, the facilities, finance, all kinds of things, and a lot of IT support. So we look at those costs, and certain costs are divided over all the FTEs that benefit from that, including the directs. So there was a huge shift in admin in the rates this time based on the administrative cost report. So that's the difference. I mean, those costs went up about $1.1 million from the old methodology that we used to use before we had the admin cost report.
Thank you. Lou?
I'm surprised. 5.5 admin costs is excellent.
5.5% is excellent. That's what I said when the state came in.
That's
I think it was
incredible.
last year and said, oh, you guys, your admin cost is way too high. I can look at 990s of other companies all over, of our provider panel that's way higher than that. So that's not true.
Private firms, if they have 10%, are so happy they can't contain themselves.
Absolutely.
5.5 is fantastic. How can the state possibly say that's too high? Well, never mind. I know
I can
better.
answer that.
I'm sorry.
Lou, I'm going to turn off your mic. No, I'm kidding. Any other questions or comments? Kathy?
Thank you. I have a question in how this is used. Are these actual rates that are billed, like, does the CMH bill the PIHP, or this is?
I can answer that. Okay, so these costs are used to bill Blue Cross, other insurance, which, you know, it's not a substantial part of what we do, is bill other insurance. But how they're used is when you look at an expense report for a provider, as the claim comes through the system, it's adjudicated and it tells whether it's Medicaid, Healthy Michigan, General Fund. And so the expense, you can clearly see how to fund source, how to pay with the revenue. For the directs, you see salaries, fringes, travel expense, rent, supplies. So this is used as a mechanism to fund source the revenue side of all the services.
Great. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have a motion? All right, I'll make a motion.
I'll take one.
Make a motion to receive and file.
All right, motion made by Kathy, support by Lori. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Next up is item B, receive and file the legislative grant awarded to Macomb County Community Mental Health from Michigan Economic Development Corporation. I'll take a motion from Joan, support from Lou. Any comments or questions on this one? Kathy?
What year did we receive that? Is that from 17 yet?
This is the, last year when we proceeded to lobby the legislature for that $5.5 or $6.5 million. They gave us $1 million. They gave it to us in the way of general fund dollars. They applied it to fiscal year 19, correct, Cindy Dudek? Jim, and I think Jim can elaborate on it a little bit too.
Yeah, the start date in the grant is identified as June 25th, 2018 through September 30th, 2019, so it's for about a year and a half.
Okay, but this was awarded way back in 17? No, just recently? Within this past year when we've been doing the various lobbying and?
In the last 90 days. Yeah.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that is because I had heard that we were going to get $1 million. I'm wondering if it's another one or if this is it. That's all. We'll ask our board member who's works for the legislature to find that out for us. Thank you.
Last I heard when we had Gary Owen, who works for GCSI, who's the Macomb County lobbyist, he came in front of us to give us a report and mentioned that we may be getting $500,000 to $1 million in the supplemental for this month, but that was the last that I've heard of it, and that was the beginning of last week. So that's all I know about that for now. Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Next is item C, receive and file the Macomb County Community Mental Health Executive Brief Interim Financial Status Report. I'll take a motion to receive and file. Motion by Lou. Support from Chris. Floor is yours.
Good evening. This is in the normal format that you should be familiar with that I've been presenting actually for the last few years now. This is reporting out on our interim financial status report that was submitted to the department in November. So what I'd like to focus on, again, we break this out by Medicaid, Healthy Michigan, the combined effects, and then our general fund. So on the first sheet in your packet, again, it's strictly related to Medicaid. And what I'd like to focus on here is the last column on the right for fiscal year 17-18. Mind you, that closed September 30th. However, we are still in year-end proceedings as far as we have, for example, providers that are still submitting claims, and they will be actually for the next week or so. So we're still in process of coming to closing the year out. So this is still showing a mix of some actual information, primarily actual information, but still with some estimates. On the Medicaid side, for 17-18, when we began that, our beginning ISF balance for Medicaid was $10.8 million. We're expecting to see for Medicaid revenue on the CMH side, Community Mental Health, revenue coming in at $166.3 million. When we report this out to the state, we also include our substance abuse, which that revenue is expected to be $4.2 million, for a total of $170.6 million in revenue, strictly Medicaid. On the expense side, we are estimating that our expenses on Medicaid will be $178.2 million. Our substance abuse, $3.2 million, for a total expense Medicaid of $181.5 million. With that being said, you can see that gives us a deficit on our Medicaid side estimated to be $10.8 million. When we report this out to the state, again, we have to show how we're going to cover that deficit. So listed below, we'll show that we're drawing from some of our Healthy Michigan surplus of about $2.4 million. We're drawing down from our Medicaid ISF of $8.4 million to again cover that $10.8 million deficit. With that being said, from our beginning ISF balance from October 1st of $10.8 million, we're looking at drawing that ISF down to a roughly $2.7 million balance in our Medicaid ISF. Moving on to the next page, breaks out likewise for Healthy Michigan. On that side, again, in October, we began our Healthy Michigan ISF with a small balance of $343,000. Our CMH revenue for Healthy Michigan is expected to be about $12.9 million. Our substance abuse, $6.7 million, for a total of Healthy Michigan revenue at $19.6 million. On the expense side, CMH expects $11 million, substance abuse roughly $6 million, for a total expense related to Healthy Michigan of $17 million. That nets out on our Healthy Michigan to a surplus of $2.4 million. When I reference the redirect from some of our Healthy Michigan or our Healthy Michigan funds to cover our Medicaid deficit, you'll see we're drawing down that surplus and we're using that to cover some of our Medicaid. So we'll redirect that 2.4. We do receive a slight amount of interest on our ISF balance, and that will net out, basically we're not seeing much of a swing in our Healthy Michigan ISF. We started at $343,000, looking at roughly ending it with $353,000, roughly the same. Again, when we report this out to the state, we do combine Medicaid and Healthy Michigan. So if I can turn your attention to this sheet where it combines, it will summarize that our combined ISF starting 10-1 was at 10-1 of 17 was 11.2 in our ISF combined Medicaid Healthy Michigan. Our combined revenue, Medicaid Healthy Michigan, we're looking, including CMH and substance abuse, to be at roughly $190.2 million. Our expenses, again combined, CMH and substance abuse, $198.7 million, still bringing that to a deficit overall of 8.4. With that being said, with our redirects drawing down from this ISF, the beginning ISF balance, we're estimating to close out fiscal year 17-18 with an ISF of approximately 3.1 million. If I can just add one note here, I know we're continually looking at where our ISF is. Again, we're still going through closing out year end. The next report with the final will not be due until the end of February, which again will report out in March with how that looks, but we are monitoring that very closely. Just doing some very high level analysis, it does look that we should still be closing out roughly around where this interim report shows us. Might swing a little bit, but I don't expect much of a change. Then on our next worksheet here, you'll see the analysis of the general fund. For our general fund, again, we're get an allocation. Our CMH revenue that we should see is 8.4 million. And our expected expenses will be roughly 8.2 million, leaving us with a very slight surplus of 249,000.
Linda, you had a question?
And it's only because of my lack of understanding of this. I'm not getting how we show I have two questions. How we show a deficit of 8 million, but we still have an ISF, which is a surplus. And maybe I have to come in your office for you to show me that. But
And we can, for sure. The ISF is basically the savings. So it's that internal savings fund.
So you have a savings when you have I've never seen us have a savings when we had a deficit.
Well, the savings is what we're required contractually to have. And so each year, we're bumping up our revenue to expenses in order to see, it took many, many years to build up that ISF and to maintain that, and I believe until the last few years, we've had always a
Sure,
positive.
we had to hurry up and figure out how
Correct.
to spend, yeah.
Correct.
So my second question is, the state is still requiring, some people say yes, some people say no, but 7.5% ISF, right?
And that's to be
so that's
fully
about
funded.
12 million, to be totally funded.
Correct.
And that's about 12 million.
Correct.
And we're at 3 million, but we don't know if there's repercussions for not being totally,
Correct.
okay, thanks.
Joan?
I don't have a great question, but I've never seen so many zeros in this report.
Zeros pertaining to?
Nothing, eh? I can't get over it, or haven't I been looking at it before? Because there's, on every page, there's, well, I guess we're in, huh? Right.
It's the parentheses that are bad.
Good or bad? Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? John?
I guess now is just as good a time as other. I know you have a motion and support, to move the item as a receive and file. I know you still have to do that, but I'm going to take this opportunity right now to have some further discussion with the board relative to where we are in our finances. And I sent a memo. I put this packet together yesterday, really at the request of the Office of the County Executive. And I sent a memo. It's dated December 13th here, and it's directed to the board. It's directed to the administrative staff. I give everyone a copy. I also gave a courtesy copy to Mr. Plua. If you remember, Mr. Plua is being on our Citizens Advisory Committee, and he's also up to speed on where we are on our funding. The correct amount for our Internal Services Fund, which we should have on October, this past October, beginning on October 1st of 2018, we should have $14.3 million in ISF, okay? And what Cindy Dudek just indicated to you, you have $3 million in ISF. That's what the projection's gonna be. So the differential there is that this board and this administration, and nothing new to us, is that we have unincurred liabilities or unsecured liabilities, and we're underfunded at this point in time in our risk of the contract to the tune of $11.2 million. So we're at risk of $11.2 million, and we've talked repeatedly and over that what happens if we would have to realize that that's our risk and that we would need to come up with those funds. We all kind of nonchalantly say, well, we're going to go to the county. The county finance director reported out to the Board of Commission last week or week before our financial situation, and we should know, as you would expect, that the Board of Commission is very concerned relative to our financial situation as we see it here. The Office of the County Executive is very concerned about our financial situation. You know, the bottom line is that, you know, we could be on the hook this year, 2019, to close out next year on October 1st to the tune of $11.2 million that we don't have. Included in the packet there were documents that were offered to me to be shared with you by the county executive that speaks to brief references to the Macomb County Charter, to budgets, to budget reductions, and also an enrolled ordinance that was passed by the Board of Commissioners in 2018, and it's italicized there, I just cut and pasted it, that the Board of Commissioners are not going to fund in their ordinance the Community Mental Health Services Board. They've kind of drawn the line, and they're not going to fund the Community Mental Health Services Board. So we have two issues that are occurring. One, as Cindy Mack indicated, is that we're still trying to make up for an $8.4 million revenue to expense deficit that we have for this fiscal year. We've had that discussion over and over. This board and the administration have been working on a strategy to be able to correct for that revenue to expense deficit that we have and that we're realizing. I think the administration here feels we're going to come close to that. We're going to come close to correcting for that $8.4 million. You know, are we going to bet a lot of money on it? No. Do we have some confidence in that? Yes. But it's going to be close. So in October of 19, you may or may not have to go to the county or go to the county executive and indicate we need a little bit of relief. You know, my personal opinion, and based on the CFO, her opinion, I believe that we may be just cost neutral and may not have to go to ask for any financial bailout. All of that being said, you're still at risk for $11.2 million. And so we continue to be in this contract where we don't have the ISF to manage our risk. So a number of things could happen or are likely to happen. One is we can't cut our way out of this. There's no way that this board can continue to reduce services. A lot of the, in my opinion, a lot of the B3 services, they're supplemental services that are offered to our population. They're kind of the glue that hold the Community Mental Health Services program together. They're the CLS services, they're the skill building, the respite care services. You squeeze the balloon here, and then all of a sudden there's a number of people who don't have the services and the supports at home, and they're saying, I have to put my child in residential care or back to institutions. And that's where we just can't continue to cut our way out of a financial situation that we're in. So that's one problem that we have here, and I'll leave it to the board and the administration to decide what you're going to do with that. I would highly suggest that you don't continue to cut B3 services. The balloon's just going to, you know, bulge someplace else. The second option is, and I think that we very quickly need to devise a plan, a request for proposals to pursue a public-private partnership. We all listened to a presenter last week The board needs to go through formal procurement processes. If you adopt that practice or that ideation, you have to go through a formal procurement process. You have to let the RFP. You're going to have to know what you're asking for. You're going to have to bring in the bidders. You're going to have to scale those bidders. You're going to have to be able to understand at a later point in time if you want to, engage in a public-private partnership, what are you really getting into? What are the risks? What is the value in that? But time is of the essence. There's no time to waste here. I don't believe the commission nor the county executive is willing to wait and continue to be at risk of potentially $11.2 million. The third thing that very well could happen is that you get a letter of a breach of contract from the department any day, because you don't have the required 7.5% in equity that you need to have. So that could happen any day. And if the department is paying attention, similarly so with LRE or Lakeshore Regional Entity, we're just a few days behind Lakeshore Regional Entity in our evolution of what's going on here. If the department would not send us a letter, we're not any better off. This board, this administration needs to do something different. The money is not there. You're not going to continue to be able to deliver the services. There's growing demand that's at the front door all the time. Ongoing administrative mandates, unfunded mandates that are coming from the department, and the monies aren't there. And so we need to do something different, or whatever we do, I still believe the department's probably going to send us a letter of breach of contract, and they're going to say, all right, you have 30 days to fix it. So time is really of the essence here. One of the other options may be a merger of some type with another PIHP. That's fraught with governance issues. How do you merge an agency with an authority and those types of things? But we need to be thinking out of the box and thinking out of the box real quickly. The Office of the County Executive wants immediate response to this. He's called a meeting for next week. I've already notified the board chair and some of my staff. They're bringing in Corporation Counsel. They're bringing in County Finance. They want an immediate resolve to this situation that's going on. The county, as I'm hearing the county executive explain to me, and I'm sure he's just being echoing the same from the Board of Commissioners, they do not want to be on the hook for $11.8 or $11.2 million. I don't believe you can wait for the Whitmer administration to be able to cough up money. I was in contact with the Board Association today with Alan Bolter. Alan says that he was going to try to, throw a Hail Mary, as he coined it to me, that there's 3 of us PIHPs that are in a similar situation right now, that maybe he would be able to work with a lobbyist, go back in the lame duck between now and next Friday and get us some additional dollars. I told him we need $11.2 million. Because that's what you need. So I asked the board and the administration to take this very seriously. Give me your opinion right now on what you feel needs to occur, what you think the options may be, and how it is that we all can work collaboratively. The county executive wants to work with us. He wants to work with the board. He wants to work with the administration. He wants to work with the Board of Commission. And he wants to work with this administration too. And so it needs to be collective. It needs to be quick. I'm talking weeks. By the January 31st, I think, I believe by the end of January that there needs to be a resolution to how we're going to proceed forward. And I put that before the board. I've given you some of the support documents that I also received from the county executive, and I'll defer, back to the board chair on how you might want to pursue this further to have further discussion.
I'm looking at the board chair. Is anybody comments, ideas? Linda?
John, I'm a little stunned at the, because when I talked to Cindy, I did say that we're not sure. So you're saying that you know definitively that if we don't have a 7.5, they told you last year that wasn't true. So, but you're saying now you've got a definitive answer that if we don't have a 7.5 reserve, they will act to shut us down by January 31st, or they'll send us a letter, whatever you said, they send us a letter. That's not my understanding, but I could be out of touch on that.
I think the contracts reads clearly that you need to have 7.5% in risk reserve or reinsurance, and we don't have reinsurance, or equities, and we don't have equities. Those are the three provisions in the contract. We don't have none of the three. The contract does not speak to risk mitigation.
But there are lots in the state that don't have that, and I thought Tom Renwick told you last year that that wasn't true, but I don't know. Is that what he said? I don't know.
So what we don't have is
But Tom Renwick's gone, so you know.
So what we don't have is reinsurance. We don't have equity to put up against worth $11 million of equity, and we don't have the Internal Services Fund, the ISF. So that's what the contract specifically speaks to. Kimberly, you can correct me if I'm wrong. What the practice has been lately by the department is that you can use your ISF and then also create a risk mitigation strategy. Okay, so we did our financial risk management strategy, and we sent that to the department on December 3rd. That's in here, in your packet. And so what we're really saying is we have $3 million of cold hard cash, and we're going to mitigate 11.2. So that's what we told the department. And so we'll see what the reception of the department is in that regard. The county executive is not playing that game. The county executive is not willing to bank that we can mitigate $11.2 million. Because what happens if we're wrong? Where do you get the money? But I report to, when I say county executive, office of the county executive, and all of my dealings have been with Mr. Lorenzo on behalf of the county executive office.
Just your comment, and maybe he didn't say it that way, but that we can't, there's no way we can handle, we're not going to just have 11 point whatever. What about all the unserved people? That's where you start with this discussion of our mandate to serve the people. Not that we're not going to have that stain on the county. That bothered me, that it was about them having a little deficit, but not about what happened. What could we do to ensure that the service?
I don't know if maybe I'm not making myself clear, and respectfully I'm trying to, that $11.2 million is unsecured liability that we have. And it's unsecured liability that, from my understanding, and I'll defer to Commissioner Kraft, that the Board of Commission is not going to cover us, and that the county executive is not going to go to the Board of Commission and ask for. He wants an immediate fix to what is an $11.7 million problem. Even if we manage our revenue to expense and come out zero in October, you're entering another contract with no money, no risk reserve. So where would you come up with the money should you come up short on your contract? There's growing demand, there's growing administrative costs, there's growing unfunded mandates. So I just beg the question, if the county executive's office and the Board of Commissioners is not going to support you on a bailout, where are you going to get your money? And another thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to stop talking because I think it's probably more beneficial for you to talk amongst one another. The county signs off on all of the contracts. So the county is financially obligated to the contract, and they're not willing to continue to practice the way we've been practicing.
John's assessment of the Board of Commissioners is accurate. I got beat up a little bit last night when Steve Smeagol, the finance director, came in to give a little bit of an update about our finance issue, and there's just not an appetite there amongst the commissioners to help us out. They don't feel that we've done enough in terms of cuts, in terms of effort to remedy this problem, and as of last night, that's the feeling amongst many, many commissioners. Lou?
First of all, John, you've been very clear. as I see the challenge of where we are right now, if the state were to give us a remedial letter in January, they would request a written response in 30 days for how we're going to handle the 11-point-something shortfall. What John has indicated is that the county executive doesn't care about whether or not a remedial letter is served upon us or not. He's indicated that he wants a strategy immediately that can be successful that will handle the 11.4 shortfall, and he wants it now. And he's indicated, and along with what Phil just said, that the Board of Commissioners is not inclined to look at possibly next October coming up with 11.4 million, and in no way, shape, or form does the county executive intend to wait beyond now. So our challenge is, how do we move immediately to provide a successful scenario that will satisfy the county executive as to how we can handle the 11.4 shortfall, period. So any other discussion that we choose to have is just baking cakes. We're just wasting time. That succinctly is what John's looking for right now, period.
Thank you, Lou. Selena?
I'm not surprised by this, the county commissioners, and I won't be surprised when we receive a letter. And I understand that they don't want to go on the hook for it, and they're saying that they're not. But are they giving any inclination of what they would do if we cannot come up with that 11.2? Are they going to say, you know what, Michigan, you can take it over, we're done with it, we're not bailing them out, they got there?
I think that's the feeling, yes.
Is that- Yeah, okay, and that's kind of what I thought also. Thank you. Right. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that would be their decision, is to turn it back over. Okay.
And I want to interject real quick too. We're talking about the prepaid inpatient health plan. Okay, that is what is at risk here, not the community mental health services program. Remember, you have two contracts. So the PIHP is what it's under fire right now, and they're the ones that hold the Medicaid revenues. The CMHSP is not for anybody to take away or for us to give away. That's protected by the mental health code, and that is ours. The CMHSP is not being called to question, and all the practices of the community mental health services program is not being called to question right now. It's the managed care organization, the administrative services functions that we are doing as a prepaid inpatient health plan is what our issue is and what we're talking about right now.
Kathy and then Lou?
There is a but attached to that comment,
Lou.
because the PIH...
Lou, I called on,
I'm sorry.
I called on Kathy, and then you can speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the first thing that I think of is I'm just really disappointed that we got to this stage without us having made some tougher decisions earlier. But it's sort of always like that in terms of you don't know how bad it is until it gets really bad, and then finally something has to be done about it. The second thing I thought of is, what is the state? I think we need to understand a little better, and that perhaps the Board of Commissioners and the Office of the Executive need to understand a little better, what is the obligation of the county via state statute? That part, I think, is helpful to know. It doesn't really matter. We still need to make up the difference. I do have confidence that there's enough brain power represented in the department, and I think there's enough determination on this board to make some tough decisions. So I look forward to having some tough recommendations that we need to consider and approve. And perhaps if there's some very detailed plan, and maybe it does require some help from the county, if the plan is serious enough, perhaps we could ask for some type of interim assistance, but they would have to be demonstration in our plan, whatever it may be, that we will recover to make up that difference. And I'm not placing blame on anyone, and I'm placing blame on all of us at the same time. So it's a joint problem. We're all here, and we need to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I think that effort could go a long way with the commissioners. Lou?
I just wanted to add that there is a but attached to what John said that confuses the issue, and we ought to be aware of it. If the PIHP is in jeopardy, the PIHP receives the money, and the PIHP disperses the money. The CMHSP gets the money from the PIHP. If the PIHP is in jeopardy, who receives the money in relation to dispersing the money? So that's the but that I think everyone needs to be aware, that I think in a certain sense confuses the situation. If you don't realize that, then you're not realizing how the flow of money comes down from the federal government to the state disperses it to the PIHP, we disperse it to the CMH, et cetera. If the PIHP is in jeopardy of dissolution, who gets the money?
You're right. Yeah, I would, before you conclude this meeting, I would strongly encourage you. I don't have any skin in the game when it comes to public-private partnership, okay? And it seems to be working at Lakeshore Regional Entity. There seems to be some, Lakeshore Regional Entity has been able to stay as a viable PIHP because of their public-private partnership with an outside entity. You know, we've done a little bit of understanding and had some presentations recently from presenters who talked about the value and opportunities and a la carte piecemeal that you could purchase from an entity to help support the public interest, you know, through private partnership. I would strongly encourage the board to give a favorable notion towards the administration to bring back very quickly opportunity to gain approval from the board to release a request for proposals to consider that. Doesn't mean that you have to do it, but when you look at what your options are very limited. And I think that the administration could, within a matter of weeks, put together a white paper or a document that would be preliminarily soothing enough to the board to say, let's pursue the option, one option of, you know, pursuing a public-private partnership. I think that's the best answer at this point in time from my vantage point. And I would hope that you're open to that. I don't think there's a lot of time here. I don't think we're talking months or quarters. We're talking weeks. The county executive's office is going to ask us for a resolution in weeks, in so much as they call the meeting next Wednesday for some of us to meet with him. He wants answers within weeks. I would strongly encourage opportunity for a RFP for consideration of public-private partnership.
Anybody willing to make that motion? No, I'm not kidding. No? Susan? What's that? For the RFP for P3? Okay, Lori makes the motion.
I'll
Is there
support.
Support from Susan. Susan, you wanted to speak to that?
So, issuing an RFP is not a bad idea. Let's see what's out there. Let's see what money we can, you know, what the proposals are. Let's take an evaluation of it. So I'll support the motion. I feel like this
is a very knee-jerk reaction. And I'm not, while I get the severity and intensity of this situation, it's frustrating to me that this is coming to us not in an assistance mode, but rather is almost very threatening. And so, I mean, that's bothersome to me. I mean, I don't, having been on the Board of Commissioners, right? Nobody seems to be solving the problem. They just want to say, nope, go away. That's a problem, right? I mean, is anybody talking about any type of a mix of a solution? Does the Board of Commissioners have the courage to put a mental health ballot initiative up to generate some revenue? Right? I mean, this is a very vulnerable population that we're talking about here, and I think at least the community that I used to represent would be supportive of that. So, it kind of feels like, we're being slapped on the wrist and told this is your problem, deal with it. And while I don't disagree that it is our problem, but I don't think it's very encouraging that there's like this overlying threat from the Board of Commissioners or the Executive's Office, to be honest with you. Somebody once said to me, you better be careful what you wish for. So, I would hope that we would respond, that the board has made a motion to issue an RFP. We are looking at public-private partnerships. That will take some time. We will move as quickly as possible. We would appreciate some assistance from the Board of Commissioners or from the County Executive's Office for any alternatives that might be available, including whether we should or should not be an authority, what that means, what availability what that does for us, what it doesn't do for us. I still can't answer that question, right? The public-private partnerships, I mean, maybe there's a way. I don't know. What have they learned from what they did with Martha T. Berry? I did, right? What we did with Martha T. Berry to spin that up. What successes have they had that maybe we could implement, or maybe we can't because we're not a separate entity? I mean, I think we need to get some assistance to look at other models and not just get threatened. And I hope that message goes back. And I can't be at the meetings, but if they want to come here, or if they want to call me on the phone, I'm more than happy to speak to them. Right? I mean, I'm here, I'm appointed to this board just like everybody else. I'm here to try and serve the needs of the community and the county. So, I'll support the motion and I'll vote in favor of it because I think we should put together an RFP. But last time I checked, RFPs don't come in weeks, right? Especially at the turn of a calendar year. So let's see what we could pull together. Let's let an RFP. Let's see what comes back. Let's get some innovative ideas from the public. See if we can solicit some ideas from the board. See if we can solicit some ideas from the county executive's office. I'll be happy to entertain all of them. Thank you.
Linda?
My experience is as a state employee, and the part I'm not hearing and that I'm not comfortable with is that no one seems to be pounding on their, I know they have transitions now, but we have new people. That's still an alternative to work it out with Lansing. I just think they're certainly part of the problem, and they could be part of the solution. I'm not comfortable with not knowing exactly what they're saying this means, since we got mixed messages last year, and also what they're saying about the solution. They don't want to take us over, probably. There will be new people, a new administration inclined to say that mental health has been underfunded. So that's a piece that's missing for me, getting the technical assistance we need from Lansing. And maybe things don't work like that anymore, I don't know.
Thank you, Linda. Lou and then Kathy?
I actually raised my hand to speak to the motion that's on the floor, However, I'm going to make some other comments based on what Linda just said. The county's procedure for RFPs is 90 days. You've got to be kidding. I think the urgency of this situation is if you can attach a 30-day response to the motion, it at least cuts down some time and gets you some response to deal with it. Because time is the challenge. What John has indicated is regardless of what the facts are, the county exec and the Board of Commissioners have said we will not be responsive to 11.4 shortfall, period. So you fix it now. So now is where we are. The reality of the situation is that the state caused the problem. They cut us $40 million in 1 year. That started the downslide. They also began shifting Medicaid consumers into Healthy Michigan because the reimbursement to us was less. They skimmed $120 million across the PIHPs in the state. And after the state association argued like hell, they gave us back $60 million. You know, doesn't anybody see the joke here? I mean, the State Department consistently has been dispersing less than the legislature provides. So the underfunding of the situation has been prevalent for years. And when you add a $40 million cut in 1 year and a skim of 120, which they keep, and after badgering for 2.5 years, they give you back half of it and say, okay, now the case is closed. You know, if I skim 100% of everything that's going on, and when you complain about it, I give you half back and tell you it's settled, don't you see the nonsense here? I mean, this is what's been going on for years, and it's gotten worse. I have said before, personally, I sense the State Department, ever since they formed the PIHPs several years ago, have been about knocking them off, because I seriously and sincerely believe that they are behind the privatization of the 218 program, and if they can knock off PIHPs, they can say to the legislature, don't you see the failure of the public system, and move very quickly into a privatization situation, and the State Department will go from whatever level of personnel they still have, and they've reduced it. If you've been in the building, you could shoot a cannon off and not hit anybody. They're all gone. They can reduce the population down to 12 people to supervise the private healthcare firms who are handling the program. And 3 years from now, when the system collapses, they will say, whoops, we made a mistake, and we'll attempt to put the public system back together again. And of course, your professionals will have gone to other areas, and you don't recoup them, and the demand is ridiculous. But that's what's going on in the background. So the facts are that we've been held to a shortfall consistently, and on top of which suffered a $40 million single-year cut that mitigated the slide. The executive knows this, but he says, fix it now. So that's our challenge. If we're going to spin our wheels expecting the state to give us the money they owe us, technically, that they shouldn't have taken away from us, that they should have paid us to begin with, we're kidding ourselves. It isn't going to happen. It isn't going to happen. So the challenge is, how do we fix it now? The facts that are out there don't matter. The fact is that our county executive says fix it now, and that's our challenge.
Do you want to make an amendment
I'm
to the
suggesting
motion?
you ought to consider 30 days, because if you wait 90, you're just spinning your wheels beyond what the challenge is. 30 has urgency. I'll make that a friendly amendment if it's acceptable.
30 for what?
For a return.
Issue an RFP before January 1st and put a return of 30 days, response of 30 days, so we get something by January 31st? Is that how?
and we could even title it Emergency RFP with a 30-day response, just to emphasize it, if that's acceptable. I'm saying if you wait 90 days, you're spitting out against the county executive's demand to fix it now. That shows nothing. So 30 days at least has a urgency response to it.
I'll accept it. I'll accept a friendly amendment to issue a RFP before the end of the year with a 30-day return on it. But that, I'm not labeling anything emergency. It is, we all get the urgency. I don't think we have to do.
Fair enough.
Lori, is that
That's
okay? Is that okay? Okay. Kathy? Yes, it was Lori's motion. Kathy?
I agree, we can put out an RFP, but that's not gonna solve everything. There has to, in my opinion, it has to be a number of things that have to be going on concurrently. And perhaps having some kind of list of recommendations from staff about some emergency cuts, whatever that, I'm not good at the terminology that the department uses, but I think they understand the concept of that. I think that has to go along with it. So I can support this motion. I don't want to attach anything else to it, but I think we also have to then follow it up with a request for recommendations on how to make some additional, I don't even want to use the word cuts, but some additional help.
Reductions?
Be it, a reduction of the loss, be it through additional revenue or reduction of costs. But it's going to be a combination of a whole bunch of things. It's not going to just be this particular thing, especially when you're writing it in such a short amount of time, when there's probably not even 10 working days left in the year, and we don't even know what we're asking for. I mean, that's part of why you ask for proposals, but we don't even know, we don't know what it is we have to ask for. That will take a bunch of research to do that. So we can go ahead and ask for this. I don't think it's realistic to get it done in this amount of time, but then whoever it is that's doing the writing can ask for an extension of the time. But it needs to, we need to have more things on the table than that. And we have a new director starting, and I think in the next couple of weeks, perhaps in speaking with our current director and the incoming director, speaking together, perhaps we can get some additional recommendations from them. Thank you.
Joan and then Lou.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what I was going to say. We have a new director coming, and we're jumping ahead of ourselves again. Instead of waiting to maybe hear what he has to say, or like Kathy said, both our executive director and director together. I don't think we should jump right away to send out an RFP. Wait for the new director. That's why you've got a new director, so he can give you some input.
Lou and then Susan.
You know, just to add solutions to consider, $500,000 on next year's primary ballot could absolutely solve the question. $500,000 would more than handle it or come damn close. And getting behind something like that could put local control into the situation as part of the attachments, I think, that really ought to be considered, that ought to be part of the discussion going forward. But if it's not on the primary ballot, you're wasting your time. But doing it on the August ballot coming up, to me, could make a lot of sense. We support the veterans with a similar consideration about 7 or 8 years ago that's been extremely successful. And certainly mental health has as many votes out there as veterans. So I'm saying that that's a consideration that just might be succinctly successful.
Mr. Chair, we have a motion on the floor. I'd like to have that cleaned up before we have other ideas. But
Susan,
good
did you-
idea, but, I mean, a good consideration, but let's
Sure.
continue with this motion.
Susan, did you want to speak to the motion?
I do. I would
Okay.
like to speak to the motion. A previous speaker mentioned that they don't think that we should go out to RFP, that we should wait for the new executive director to get here. And an RFP is just information. Doesn't mean you have to act, right? It's, in my opinion, you let the RFP now so that when the new executive director comes in, he takes his position, he's got time to get some transition time to do some things. By the time the results are coming back in, then he's got more to work with. So to me, he may get the results back and say, oh, no, that's not at all what I recommend. I think, but why not give him the information? He doesn't have to. Just because you release an RFP doesn't mean you actually have to pick any of them. Right? It's just information that's coming in as to what our alternatives are. I mean, we had a presentation from one potential provider. I thought there was some information in there that was of value to us, but I would want to see more than one provider. So this is a way to kind of speed that process up. So why not do this? It's just information. Let's get the information. So I'm speaking in favor of the motion. And I hope that everybody will, when it comes time to take action on it, well, then it might be a different story depending upon what comes back in. But let's get moving and let's take a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Any other speakers to the motion? Sorry.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
You, you can in public comment, but not.
Could you
Selena?
repeat the motion, please?
The motion is to put out an RFP for P3 and have a response in 30 days.
Okay.
Selena?
So I know the confusion's about the RFP, but what if we do an RFI instead of an RFP? Because that's what we're looking for is information, not a proposal.
Well, we have a motion in support for an RFP.
As supporter of the motion, I mean, it's all terminology, right? There's our request for qualifications, request for information, request for proposals, right? Typically, and other people have kind of mentioned, yeah, I mean, when you're asking for a proposal, I'm assuming you're saying, I want this service, this way, this timing, this volume, this, you know what I mean? You almost have to have more, when you're doing an RFP, you almost have to have more information go out, which could be cumbersome to gather at this date. But an RFQ is just like, yeah, I'm a qualified vendor. I have these certifications and I can help you out. Well, that doesn't really tell us what we want to know. A request for information, you can make it broad and generic. You can make statements without having to disclose very contractual specific things. You could do a request for information. We're seeking, a third-party provider. We're seeking, someone to assist with some of our administrative functions, some of our, technology, billing, whatever issue. We could list all kinds of things there, right? So, I mean, I kind of like the idea of an RFI, and I mean, if the maker of the motion were willing to accept it, but that makes sense to me because I think it allows staff to be much more agile and get this out the door quickly, and it makes the public much more agile in how they respond. But I think it should be very specific to ask for like concrete dollars. I mean, we need to know what money's involved. It can't just be, here I am, pick me. It's got to be very specific. This is what I can do for you. This is what I can save you. Right? So you'd have to word it that way, the RFI. Thank you.
John?
And I know you want to get onto the motion, just so I'm clear in what I was suggesting to the board, if you're putting things in your cart, and your cart is the cart of fix, I'm just suggesting that what you put in your cart is an opportunity to even consider public-private partnership. I'm not saying you go there, and I appreciate, to Lori that you made the motion, because I think it's progressive. I think that's what this board needs. I'm not saying you need to establish a public-private partnership. It is a partnership that, you know, maybe you want to purchase assistance with your managed care. It's about purchasing assistance with your managed care functions, your managed care organization. It's not purchasing services. It's not purchasing, you know, technology necessarily. It could be, but I believe it's more along the line of partnering with somebody who has an expertise and an assistance, not that we're not good at it, but an added expertise in being able to help us with our managed care organization operations, our MCO operations. What they also bring, and what this board is in dire need of, is a little added ISF, and they will partner with you, and they're not going to make the $11 million whole, but they may give you a little bit, and then if it takes root, and the board is comfortable with it, whatever they see back in the way an RFP or an RFI, and they want to do a partnership, then that may be a little bit more palatable to the department to say, okay, we'll continue to work with Macomb County. That's what you want. And that's only one thing in the fix cart. You know, I'm waiting to hear, you know, from, you know, Chairman Bosberg, what other things you want to put in the fix chart. I'm saying we can't continue to cut. I don't believe so. You know, we've cut 80 administrative staff. There's 80 vacant positions. We've cut $15 million in CLS services. We are a service provider. All the low-hanging fruit is gone. So I'm curious to know what we put in the fix cart beyond a public-private partnership. But I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm just asking for more stuff to go in the fix cart. So.
Before we mention that, yeah, I have a question about the motion. So if we put out an RFI and we get that back, do we then have to put out an RFP and an RFQ, and we're wasting more time? That's my concern. If we get the information back and we gather all the information and then we say, okay, this is what we want, then we have to put out an RFQ or an RFP for what we want?
Look,
Susan?
Yeah,
I'm asking because I genuinely don't know.
So, you know, I get, you know, government moves like a dinosaur, right? I get this, right? We're very slow-moving entities. But, you know, if you are picking up a partnership with somebody that's very capable, they've got some templates that they're working with, right? They know their business. They know what they're doing. They have the ability to move very quickly. You just have to be willing to work with them and not be so squirrely with them, right? I mean, because we can get that way. So, you know, to me, I think an RFI is sufficient at this point because I think it's expedient. It's about expedience of getting it out the door and seeing what comes back and then refining and giving our new director an opportunity to refine what comes back. So I think that because it gives staff the ability to move quickly, and then it gives the public, the potential bidders or, you know, companies the opportunity to give information back, and they can be as specific as they want to be. And we're going to get some back that we're going to go, yeah, right. And we're going to pitch them, and then we're going to get others back that are going to be somewhat viable, right? And we can discern between them, and I just think it gives us a lot of flexibility. But if you work with the vendors, and I think the staff is certainly capable of doing that, you work with them, you can move quick, right?
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure. Lori, you were okay with the RFI change? Yes. Okay. Lou?
Basically, I have no comment about RFP or RFI. I really don't care. Yeah. But we're missing the point. The one who cares and you need to impress is the county executive. What's his interpretation? Does he look at an RFI as a weak response to him saying to us, let's do something, or does he look at an RFP as a stronger approach? This is the person who said to you, I want it fixed and I want it fixed now. So I'm saying that you really need to be careful. He's the one that you've got to get to go along. And the response from us, I think, has to be responsive. That's all I'm saying. I don't care what it is. But if you don't get his attention that we're responding to his request now, the whole thing's a waste of time. he'll make whatever moves he wants to make in the relationship, and you're going to react to it. So I'm saying that's the consideration that you really need to have in your response. And I'm not so sure I see it. So call for the motion, we'll vote it. I don't care, but you better consider the fact that it's got to impress the county executive.
Thank you, Lou. All right, we have a motion and support on the floor. We will take the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. RFI it is. And then we also had mention of a possible millage, and I smiled very largely when you said that, because I've been mentioning that for months and nobody's really, the Board of Commissioners have never. So that may be something to add as an option. And John, are you looking for these for your meeting on Wednesday to take with you? Would it be helpful to have them before Wednesday?
Yeah, whatever the board offers up, in understanding where the county executive's office is, I think that we can bring to them would be a little bit more satisfying to the county executive. I think he wants it to be very timely in its delivery. I think we should be giving it all of our thought. I think the meeting that is going to occur on the 19th with myself and the new director, Mr. Pinketai, and some of the staff and Chairman Vosberg, is going to be of a different sort. I think the meeting is going to involve county finance. I think the meeting is going to involve corporation counsel from the county and ourselves, and I think the discussion is going to be quite frank, where we are relative to the funding and what is and is not supported by a continuance of the way we operate, but by the county executive's office and the Board of Commissioners.
I appreciate that, because I was thinking we have full board next week already. So if we don't come up with all the answers tonight, we have a week, and possibly when other agenda items comes up at full board, we can continue the discussion and add to the cart, if that would be agreeable to you. Kathy, did you have anything? Or it was Susan, I'm sorry. Susan and then Kathy.
That's okay. I'll make sure I get this worded. I'd like to make a motion to request the Board of Commissioners to consider a ballot initiative for 2019 for a dedicated community mental health millage.
Don't we still, did we pass? I'm sorry.
We passed the
it.
RFI,
Right.
yes. Susan with the motion, Joan with support. Is there discussion? Linda?
We need to do our due diligence about the three places in the state that have a mental health millage. It's not the bailout that you think it is. It's for very dedicated services. Taxpayers don't want to supplant, like they don't want to fix the roads. Clinton Township couldn't pass a millage to fix the roads because the state's supposed to fix the roads. So they're not going to pass a probably won't be inclined to pass a millage to provide mental health. The three places where there is a millage in place for mental health is for a very specific kind of service. I don't know what it is, but we could get that information. So it's not the kind of bailout that, it's not a million, no one's going to pay for what the state should be paying us for our public mandate to provide these services.
But it's another piece of the puzzle. Susan?
So I hear what you're saying, and I don't doubt that information would be helpful, but people can provide it to us all day long, and it doesn't really matter. The Board of Commissioners has the ability to put something on the ballot. This body does not. They need to, I agree, and if we can get that information and send it with this request, I mean, I'll take that as a friendly to get that information from those counties and include it with our request to the county, but to the board, but they have to make that decision. We can't do that for them, right? They're going to have to ask the finance director, how much does this much of a millage generate? They're going to have to ask. They're going to have to forecast it. They're going to have to see what Headley does to it. They're going to have to, there's a lot of stuff that they have to do. We can't do it for them, right? So put in the request. Say, look, we want a dedicated millage. It's start crafting it, right? I mean, that's what they have to do. They have to come up with the language, and they have to do their diligence, and they have to share information with each other, and they got to get the votes to get it passed. There you go. So that, to me, that's corrective action. Here you go. That's one more. Let's go.
Lou?
Well, obviously, I'm not necessarily in disagreement. I earlier made a comment about $500,000 on the next primary election, but I think that motion is premature, and I'll tell you why. We're dealing with the county executive right now, and that meeting is with the county executive. Bringing up at that meeting that one of the remedies that's possible is the county executive's support of $500,000 in the primary election, and his support with the Board of Commissioners. You're going to need that to pull it off with the Board of Commissioners is the substantial way to do it. If you pass that motion today and you meet with the county executive, in a sense that's going around him. It's with Lorenzo and the executive, and I think dealing with the executive is the appropriate way to do that. I'm saying that that's politically the way you ought to consider doing this, rather than jumping to the Board of Commissioners with a resolution. I don't think that's prudent. Although I think that's one of the solutions that could be very successful with the right kind of campaign behind it. But making that presentation at the meeting, is it next Wednesday, is where that conversation should occur. That's my feeling on it.
Well, if he wants action and options, it's an added option, Lou. Kathy?
It takes a team. We have an executive branch of government, we have a legislative branch of government, and then we have our board that's set up by state statute that's, we're appointed by the Board of Commissioners. So I think we need to include all of the various departments. So I think it's a very appropriate motion. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions to the motion?
I won't vote against it, but I think it's not prudent.
Okay, noted, Lou. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and support. We'll take the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? With Linda opposing. Motion passes. John taking notes? Okay. Anybody else with an idea right now? Linda?
I will be more comfortable if I had some information. So I would just ask that staff expect of Lansing to be a partner and get at least what what they might say or recommendation. We haven't heard lately of what they, so I'd like that. I'd like Lansing to be consulted on it. Okay, thank you.
We will, and in light of these larger types of initiatives, and I think there needs to be something, we need to just restructure and do our business a little differently than we have been doing it over in many, many years, just because we're fortunate in that situation with the absence of funding and growing demand. We just continue to need to be creative. That being said, you need to know that Jim Losey and the executive staff and the senior administrative staff, many of those, all of those folks have been working tirelessly for months trying to come up with various cost-saving mechanisms. We've reduced lease costs, and there's money that we've gained there. We've cut provider contract rates, but we can't continue to cut. You know, we just cut them recently again as well, too. That has some negative ramifications to it. We've reduced administrative staff again. On January 1st, you know, we've you know, I think we picked up around $350,000 additional in further administrative staff reductions that are going on. Voluntary furlough days continue. There's a number of initiatives that we continue to do administratively to continue to be conscientious and aware of how we need to contain our costs. All of those are not going to make up the whole of the $11 million. We're not going to get close to that. So that's all I'm asking for, and all I'm asking and suggesting is that we look at all those things we can put in the fixed cart. I will reach back, and I'll work with Dave to reach back to the Board Association with Alan and see during lame duck here in the next week if, we can get anything. I told Alan today I want $11 million, 11.2, and if, Commissioner Kraft is saying we may get 500, then, I think we can advocate there. I think we need to work with our legislature. There's 3 new state senators, 3 in Macomb, 3 new state reps in Macomb. They don't probably know much about community mental health. We ought to have a legislative breakfast, January 1st or whenever. We need to do that through the Board Association. We need to, stay afoot there. The department, we need to continue to massage our relationship or, develop our relationship with the department. I've talked about this before. Who are the people at the department that you know? They're all gone. Jeff Weifrich at this point in time is the acting director for Tom Renwick. And I've been trying to work with Jeff Weifrich too, to continue to show that Macomb is a viable partner and we want to continue to stay in the business. But there's a whole new administration coming in. So I just want you to hear from myself that we're working hard, and my hat's off to that administrative team. They are at it all the time trying to tackle what we have in the way of a funding issue, and my hat's off to them.
Thank you, John. Did we ever vote to receive and file the report? I didn't think so. Did I get a motion for that? I got that far. Okay. All right. I have a motion and support to receive and file the financial report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Yes, Lou.
That include John's handout in the motion? I think you ought to be specific.
Motion already passed, Lou. Would you like?
Then I think you need another motion to include John's handout that attaches to the financial update. I would make that motion. Receive and file.
If you'd like to make that motion, is there support? All right, hearing no support, motion dies. All right, and I would ask all the board members to think of things between now and full board. If you have any ideas between now and then, either email Kathy, email John, email anybody. Susan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion to direct community mental health staff to reach out to the Macomb County-based federally qualified health centers, inclusive of Downriver Community and MyCare, to review options for coordination of care, services, medications in an effort to seek budget savings.
Motion from Susan, support from, was that Kathy? Support from Kathy. Any discussion or Susan, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, if I could. It's just, look, I kind of view this a little bit like the RFI, but the RFI is more, in my mind, for administrative type services, whereas reaching out to these federally qualified health centers is a little bit different. One of the things that I learned at a recent Metro Region dinner, and it was just a very good point that was made, is that, some of the initiatives that have come from the state involve using insurance providers, and the very nature of insurance is in direct conflict with community mental health, right? I mean, we seek to provide services to the most expensive recipients, right, the highest volume consumers, right, that we're seeking that clientele out. Insurance companies, on the other hand, typically try to avoid very expensive recipients of care, right? So, you kind of have a opposition relationship. The thing that I like about using the federally qualified health centers, which is FQHC, is FQHCs, by their very nature, also are seeking the most expensive needs, the dollar, the people, the underserved, right? The people that have conditions that are difficult to manage, They want to get them in-house, they want to get continuity of care, they want to try and get medications, want to keep them consistent. Their mission is very similar to us, except it's in a physical health setting as opposed to a mental health setting. So it seems to me that there should be some coordination and overlap of that type of care, and I've wanted for a long time to really try to seek that out. So, you know, they have areas that they overlap in with substance abuse. They have areas that they overlap in with, you know, some depression screening that they do and things like that. And it just seems to me like getting people in the room and starting to talk about this is the best way to do that. And downriver is really in the north end of the county, and my care is in the south end of the county. So let's have them all. Let's bring everybody in. Let's get together, see what we can do. Beauty is they're already Medicaid providers. They're already using a lot of the same state and federal required reporting tools, things like that. Let's start talking about what we can do. Yeah, it is. It's the same. I totally disagree. My fellow board members saying they're not going to help us. I totally disagree. It's all federal dollars, and there's also RAP dollars that come down to the FQHCs for serving populations. So I think you'll be surprised at what you can find. Thank you.
Kathy?
I just think we need to just consider everything, and that's one more thing we can consider. And maybe in the conversation, it might not take too long of a conversation with them to find out if it's worth pursuing or not, but let's look at it.
Any other questions or comments on this motion? Yep, motion by Susan. It was supported by Kathy, right? Yes. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All opposed? Motion passes. All right. Yes, Joan.
While you're coming up with motions, it seems like this is at night. So, I say we go out to some of these foundations. You got the Flynn Foundation, not mine, but you know what I mean? You got all these foundations out there. Why not ask them to support us? There must be millionaires out there that can step in and help us. We'll check it out.
Add it to the cart, John. Yep, millionaires. Underline that, bold it a couple times. Is there anything else, or can I move on to 5D? We're moving on to 5D. Excellent. Okay. 5D, receive and file the Macosa request to the Oversight Policy Board to partially fund Macomb Operation RX Collaborative utilizing Public Act $2. Randy, sit down.
I'm good with that. It's well defined.
I'll take a motion to...
Move to receive and file.
Motion by Kathy.
Support.
Support by, I think, Chris.
Everybody supports it.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Randy on this one? All right, seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Next is resolutions. There are no resolutions, but I would like to mention that last night at the Board of Commissioners meeting, we did recognize our director, John Kinch, for his years of service. We were bummed that you couldn't be there, but we do have a proclamation for you. We will get that to you at some point. Maybe I'll bring it to full board. So congratulations, John. Thank you for everything. Item number 7, other agenda items. Are there any other items from any board members? John, do you have anything else? I hope not. No? Okay. Hearing of the public. Anybody from the public wishing to speak? Okay. Anybody from the public going once, going twice? We will close the hearing of the public. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
The special full board meeting will immediately start as soon as we move seats here. I'd like to call to order the Community Mental Health Board, Services Board Special Full Board Meeting with a special agenda. And I'd like to begin with our mission statement, which is still the same as it was at our prior meeting. Macomb County Community Mental Health, guided by values, strengths, and informed choices of the people we serve, provides quality services which promote recovery, community participation, self-sufficiency, and independence. Motion to adopt the agenda is in order. Motion by Birdie, support by Doherty. Hearing of the public. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address this body? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, which is to ratify the contract of the incoming CEO, David Pankatai. And we have in front of us the language that we approved at the Personnel Committee meeting, with one addition that's in green on the second page. This was after we had approved our language. I sent it to the Office of the Executive because they have to sign off on all our contracts. They requested that this language in greens, that this contract be subject to the approval of the county executive or the executive's designee. And they've approved everything so far. They're just adding this. And just as a point of information, whether we have that additional phrase in the contract or not, it still has to be by the charter has to be approved by that anyway. So it's just kind of clarifying that. And then we have another paper on our desk that was passed out. This was from Brian Jacks, the service director that's been assisting us at our personnel meetings. And when we have the language in the contract, a reference to Macomb County Retirement System, and if you recall, questions about that were brought up at the personnel meeting. We didn't have enough information to make a change of any kind, and received a memo from Al Lorenzo from the executive's office, said he would defer to Brian Jacks. Brian sent this email that included, we recommend all references to Macomb County Retirement System be changed to the defined contribution plan. And he said that is the phrase that they use for all new employees going forward. So there should not be a question because that phrase has been used since the policy, since the plan has changed. So, all right, so what's the motion?
I would so move to change it to reflect defined contribution plan wherever Macomb County Retirement System is in the contract.
Yeah, you know, and he put, I think he really means Macomb County.
Defined contribution plan.
Change
Retirement
system to defined contribution. I just copied cut and pasted what he put, but all right, so you're making a motion to ratify the contract.
No, I'm not. I'm making a motion
All right,
for that amendment.
okay, we need a motion. We don't have a motion for the contract yet. Okay, so we have a
Support.
motion by Linda, supported by Susan, to ratify the contract as presented, including the subject to approval of the county executive phrase. All right, so we have that on the floor. Now, if you'd like to offer your amendment, I'll accept that.
I would move that all references to Macomb County Retirement System in the contract be changed to defined contribution plan.
Yes, can we just clarify that?
Macomb County.
Will
Fine.
Macomb County Retirement System be changed to Macomb County Defined Contribution Plan?
Fine.
All right, thank you. Is there support for that? Support by, I'm looking over there, Vosberg, Kraft. Support by Kraft. So we have on the floor to approve the contract and changing the right now we have amendment to change the language to Macomb County Contribution Plan. defined contribution plan. Thank you. All right, any discussion on that amendment?
Are we just voting on the amendment?
Well, that's what I have right now, unless the maker wants to accept the whole thing as a friendly.
Accept the whole thing if we want.
We'll just take the,
However you gotta do it.
yeah, let's just take the vote on the amendment. We'll just keep it simple here. Any discussion on that? All in favor of the amendment to change language from retirement system to defined contribution plan signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so now we have on the floor the contract in its entirety. Any continued discussion on that? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I am opposed.
Okay,
Record me as a no.
all right. To the entire motion, yes. All right, so motion carries. Congratulations. It is finally final. Item number 5, other agenda items. Are there any other agenda items? Any hearing of the public? Item number 6, anyone from the public that would like to address this body? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much for all your work on this.